Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nick Wakeman, the editor-in-chief of Washington Technology, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our today's conversation, New Priorities for Addressing Cyber Threats. Cyber attacks have long been a critical priority for government leaders, but the past few years, they really seem to have yielded a dramatic increase in their frequency. Experts at Cybersecurity Ventures estimate a cyber breach occurred every 11 seconds in 2021, nearly 4 times that of 2016. To combat threats and protect critical infrastructure, leaders are challenged with understanding both the how and the why of these attacks. Where do leaders go next with this information? How are they leveraging the correct security strategies to prepare for the threats of tomorrow? During today's conversation, we'll unpack all this and more. So during my conversation with Gabriel Davis, if you have any questions, just look for the Q&A box below the player. And so ask your questions early, don't wait till the end. So as I said, today I'm joined by Gabriel Davis, the Risk Operations Federal Lead within the Cybersecurity Division of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So Gabriel, thanks for being here today. So let's jump right in. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. I love the opportunity to come in and talk about these types of topics and better inform our stakeholders and those throughout the country listening in.
Oh, great. So let's just sort of level set everybody. Give us sort of the elevator speech about what your organization does and what you do.
Absolutely. So what we do on my team is we leverage all of CIS's data to develop cyber risk products, that proactively and actionably provide analysis on emerging cyber threats and vulnerabilities to drive stakeholder risk reduction and improve overall security posture across, our federal civilian executive branch agencies, territorial governments, and private sector partners. And effectively, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all of the information that we can to those users so they can make the right decisions for their organizations based on their needs.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit more on who your major stakeholders are? I guess maybe like who are your customers and how you serve them?
Right. So CISA has a very broad mandate, right? So we're an agency that's standing on the front lines of, the cybersecurity threat. And our stakeholders range, as I said before, those federal civilian executive branch agencies, think, Department of Commerce or anyone in between, Department of Treasury. All of those agencies underneath those departments fall under our purview, as well as state, local, tribal, territorial governments. So think your local county government or your state government. All of those fall under CIS's purview and CIS's mandate for protection. So when it comes to our major stakeholders, primarily what we're looking for is we're looking for critical infrastructure entities that fall within those 16 critical infrastructure sectors.
Okay. And maybe let's talk a little bit too about why do you think the number of attacks has grown so exponentially in the last several years?
Well, it's a very interesting, question. With all things, right, as we develop our technology and as the Internet of Things grows, we increase our, exposure. So 20 years ago, it would have been, kind of ludicrous to think that your refrigerator or your microwave or your thermostat would have an IP address associated with. But that's what we're faced with today. There's varying vantage points in which threat actors can leverage access into our networks. So as the surface area increases of available attack space, so will attacks.
Okay. Now you mentioned the critical infrastructure, which sort of, and then the surface area for attacks growing. I know one place that we followed some, probably not enough, but is this sort of convergence of OT and IT, the operational technology and information technology. Can you talk a little bit about what that convergence is and why that has created the kind of vulnerabilities that creates?
Absolutely. So through the decades, we've had these operational devices, PLCs, programmable logic controllers, that that were doing these physical functions, think opening a door or turning on a valve, shutting a valve. And these devices were operating fairly in a vacuum. But as our devices have increased in technology, as we've made technological advances and we've grown in our capabilities to remotely access these devices, some of these devices were never truly intended to be a part of our current infrastructure in terms of the Internet of Things or the IoT, which is the industrial Internet of Things. Effectively, we have devices that have been around for decades that were never intended to have this type of security, were never designed for the types of threats that we face today. And that convergence talks about these devices that may or may not be prepared for the onslaught of the cyber threats that exist today. But effectively, as our and I'm going to keep harping on this, as our advances grow, we have technological advances, we're able to do more with less, but all that relies on connectivity. And with more connectivity, the more surface area we have for disruption.
Okay. Can you give us maybe, I know the Colonial Pipeline, I guess, was one where there was an attack through the IT into the OT part. Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of attacks we're seeing?
So in the Colonial Pipeline instance, this is, I'm going to spin this as a good news story, in that their IT infrastructure was attacked, but the threat actors actually never made it into the OT environment. The Colonial Pipeline took the proactive step of shutting off their OT environment to prevent threat actors from leveraging an attack against their OT. So they did some proactive steps to prevent OT from being compromised. Is that the correct answer in every instance? I can't say. It's a agency by agency basis. But we can't lose the after effects of that attack. It caused a run on fuel on the East Coast. It caused major disruptions in our supply chains just by them shutting down for that limited time period. So although there was not a direct attack on the OT environment, the effects were still there of a disruption. Okay. So all those things need to be taken into account when we talk about defending and being resilient against cyber threat actors.
Yeah. One thing with critical infrastructure I find is really fascinating is that you have some of it's owned by government entities. A lot of it's, most of it, I think, is owned by private entities. But then even in there, there's such a range of the skills, resources, capabilities of the entities. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you all manage that? Because I assume there's some people, some organizations you work with that are very sophisticated, others that aren't so sophisticated.
Absolutely. There's varying levels of resources available to these organizations as we interact with them. We interact with private companies that have large, coffers to be able to throw a lot of money at their problems. And we have, small local agencies, that operate on very strict local budgets that are allocated by their state. And they have to be just as robust and defensively minded as larger organizations. So what we attempt to do is we attempt to take the lessons learned from all of these attacks and all of these different issues. And we try to provide information to help the organization right-size their defenses based on their budgets, the type of organization that they are, the type of infrastructure they have, what equipment they have on hand, and to ensure that we don't attempt to try to fit, a square peg into a round hole. We allow them to define the peg that they need for, the hole that they're trying to fill.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's say, my organization's been attacked. Do I come to you guys in the midst of that attack, or should I be coming to you ahead of time? And what kind of services, or you mentioned products, how are you going to help me?
So I'll always encourage, anyone that's interested in CISA services to come as soon as, you feel that you're ready to engage CISA. We offer a number of, no cost services to all our stakeholders. One of them is the Cyber Hygiene program. And what that does, that provides vulnerability scanning. It provides other risk and vulnerability assessments and a number of different products and services available, again, at no cost to the end user, uh, to better protect your organization from cyber attacks. And in that way, we're providing that service upfront. So in case of an attack, I would say immediately, as soon as possible, right? If you feel like you've been, compromised, absolutely contact CISA at your earliest, as early as possible. That way we can, respond as well. And if we're tracking these attacks, then we're better able to put, faces to names, do all types of other campaign analysis, and track these threats as they move across different infrastructure sectors and attack different organizations. So we can say, hey, we saw an attack like this with these IOCs associated. This looks very familiar to an attack we saw recently. This is likely the same threat actor, or it's a similar threat actor associated. One of the good things that happened recently was, there was legislation passed that required critical infrastructure agencies to notify CISA within 72 hours of a compromise. The Cyber Incident Reporting and Critical Infrastructure Act was recently signed into law that made that, a requirement for organizations. And albeit it may seem, small, in the grand scheme of things, this is a game changer. Now we're able to see things on a broad spectrum where we otherwise weren't before, where organizations are going to be feeding us that information in real time as it happens.
Oh, that's amazing. So before, there was no reporting requirement for a lot of the critical infrastructure.
There was no formal requirement, no, sir.
So you just had to rely on goodwill and people volunteering the information and the relationships. Absolutely. I guess you have. Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely.
And to me, even
and that's done well for us.
Yeah. It even seems 72 hours is a long time. Yeah. But I bet it does. So now with that information, with that information, how will you all use that that near real time reporting?
Again, we use information to go in, of course, at the agencies or organizations, discretion, right? What we don't want to do is we don't want to tread into areas that we're not welcomed, right? We're not a, law enforcement agency. We're not there to, kick in doors and, haul people off. We're there to work with the organization to defend their networks, defend their infrastructure, and to make them more secure in the future. So with that, them providing us information, we can take that information, pair it with other information that we gather from other sources, whether it be our, internal assessments or through our, cyber hygiene scanning data, or just through, again, data that's provided willingly by our partners through our ISACs. And we're able to provide better information for our stakeholder at the end of the day, because we have a greater, we have more exposure to more data where we can see the entire landscape of activity, and we're not just seeing, small bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah. Now, ISACs, what is that?
It's an information sharing and coordination group.
Oh, okay. Okay. And you have those around different critical infrastructures in different areas. Okay.
Yes.
Now I know that, so there's 16 critical infrastructures, but then now there's I don't know how new it is, but it seems like there's this other way of thinking about it. I think it's the national critical functions, and I think there's like 55 of those. Can you talk about what the difference and how those interact and what that means?
So effectively, think of it as being more specific. The 16 critical infrastructure sectors are a great place to start to, kind of put organizations into specific pools that are similar in nature. But when we want to get more specific about the activities going on with the organizations, the national critical functions are better able to do that. And, those national critical functions are around 4 main categories, and that's, connections, and that's, the technologies that, enable the critical communications and capabilities. There's the distribution, just as it sounds, to move people, goods, utilities. There's the management, managing national security and hazardous material, and then there's supplies. That's the actual, goods and materials that are associated with them. But essentially what it does is it says if an organization does an activity, right, say provides water, which would be a national critical function, sure, that, might be easy to align, say a water utility company, but every company may not be a water utility, but they still provide that, that service, that function as a part of the national critical function. And that's just a broad example of how the national critical functions can be more specific because they associate an actual activity as opposed to a title in the name or just an association based on where it sits within the government or in the private sector.
Now, do some of these functions cross into different critical infrastructures? Is there a
Absolutely. So the national critical functions are sector agnostic, and that was on purpose. So we can say, okay, maybe, so one example is, food and agriculture sector, and talking about the 16 critical infrastructure sectors. So that's a sector that stands alone, but we know that it has multiple dependencies on other sectors, namely the water and wastewater system sector. You wouldn't have food and agriculture without water. So how do we determine, where those dependencies lies unless we are able to say, okay, there's some sector interdependency here and better label that for users and organizations.
So it sounds like by identifying those interdependencies, where those interdependencies is that where there are potential vulnerabilities, where the vulnerabilities could be that would have, or?
So that all depends. It depends on the architecture. It depends on how they're connected. It depends on how they're communicating. Unfortunately, we're not going to see, threats slow down again as our infrastructure grows and as we become more reliant on, technology. The threat actors are watching. They're waiting for their opportunity, to come in and compromise our systems. An important case study, right? 3 years ago, we all very abruptly started working from home, and our remote work infrastructure ballooned massively overnight. So that is, an example of how we need to be able and we need to rapidly respond, to our changing landscape to better defend our networks from threat actors. So they are never going to be at a loss for opportunities. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we're minimizing those opportunities as much as possible. An example I like to use is, locking your car door, right? Dedicated and motivated threat actor is going to get in your car and he's going to take your car if he really wants it. Someone that's looking for, an opportunity that'll just compromise, he'll go and jiggle the door handle, and if the door is locked, he'll move right along. That's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to minimize the targets of opportunity as much as possible.
That is a great example because I've actually been the victim of that, of the car jiggling, and stole all the change out of the car because I had left it unlocked. And the police said, oh yeah, in the spring especially, they just, at night, they walk through the neighborhood and they just try car doors until they find the one that's open. But that made me think too, as you're talking about threat actors, can you talk a little bit about, because, in my mind, sometimes I just kind of think that's a single kind of thing, a threat actor, but there's actually multiple kinds of actors, and maybe you can describe what they are and what they want and how we mitigate them.
Absolutely. So, you got your standard, politically motivated threat actors. You have, those that are looking for targets of opportunity. You have what's known as script kiddies, individuals that, are just on the internet and they see some proof of concept code hanging out and they say, oh, I'm going to try this out and see if this works. And you have nation state threat actors, or advanced persistent threats, APTs that are operating. These threat actors are more sophisticated. They have more funding. They're backed by, nation state adversaries that are looking to do significant harm, to the country. So there's a lot of different variety in there. For the most part, right, when we're talking about, these threats, we're trying to, again, uh, reduce our risk and attack surface area as much as possible. So if they are, when they do come, it's not even a question of if, it's just, when, when it's your turn, when you get in someone's crosshairs, we'll be better prepared and at least frustrate the adversary as he attempts to, get into our network and maneuver and take over our information or, remove our ability to actually function on our network.
Now, talk a little bit about what they're looking for, because I think that's sort of the different actors, I guess, want different things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, think about, different types of thieves, right? They rob banks or, convenience stores. They'll, break into houses or they break into cars. It's all dependent. Each have their own flavor and their own motivations, and they'll go after uh, typically things that they're comfortable with, things that they're able to, compromise, that they've compromised in the past. We see these with APTs, advanced persistent threats. They'll go out and there are certain indicators that we look for that are associated with them because they repeat those same activities. Not because they're, highly sophisticated, but because they work, right? If you're going to take one shot at someone's network, you want to, increase the possibility that that activity is going to yield, an outcome that you're looking for. So phishing is an excellent example of that. Something not very high tech, uh, you know, heavily based on the user clicking the email. Um, but if I'm a threat actor and I send out 1,000 phishing emails and 2 people click it, I've done very little work for, access to 2, victims. So, and that scales very well. So we see, things like phishing emails being very prominent in the threat actor landscape just because of its effectiveness, not necessarily because of its complexity.
Wow, that's interesting. And so how does somebody, like I'm running a, network for a mid-size agency, how do I take that knowledge and look at what my risk profile is, and how do I use that?
So the very first thing I would tell anyone that's looking to secure themselves better is to enable multi-factor authentication when available. That is going to reduce your, attack surface area significantly. What it'll do is it'll force a threat actor to work harder. If they really want to compromise you, it'll force them to have to, go through, other frustrating tasks to gain access to your network. They'll have to know your password, and they'll have to have, the device that, the third-party authentication device that you'll be using. And in most cases, threat actors, they'll move on from organizations or from individuals who have multi-factor authentication because of the difficulty in doing so. Now, is that at a 100% you're going to be secure, from here until the end of time? Absolutely not. I would never say that. But what it does is it does increase your security and it does increase your posture moving forward. Now, if you're looking for more information, I would recommend, looking into the Shields Up campaign that was launched recently as a part of CISA's campaigns. And what it does is it has resources for organizations. It has resources for individuals and their families. How to better train their children to be able to spot phishing emails. If you get an email from someone who you never talked to and they ask you for a gift card, I put my money on that. That's some sort of phishing scam email. But those are just some of the things that happen. And again, they seem rudimentary. They seem, silly almost. But the problem is that they work, and that's why threat actors keep doing them.
Yeah. Wow. So how does an organization balance? Because you have every organization has multiple risks. How do you balance like where you put your priorities on, mitigating those risks?
Right. Every organization is going to do that differently based on, their posture, what resources they have available to them. how they want to prioritize, OT versus IT, personnel. However, organization dependent, right? We provide resources that'll help them, that will assist them in determining that information. What I can tell you that an excellent place to start when you're trying to reduce risk in the near term is to check out the known exploited vulnerabilities list that CISA publishes. So what CISA found is that the best way to determine whether or not a vulnerability is going to be, exploited in the future is to look at if it's ever been exploited in the past. And the known exploited vulnerabilities list tends to be, criticality agnostic. So if anyone's familiar with the CVSS scores with vulnerabilities, you have, highs, criticals. What the KEV list does is it says, okay, this may not be a critical vulnerability, but it's being actively exploited in the wild. And when we say actively exploited in the wild, we don't mean that there's exploit code available. We mean that we've witnessed threat actors leveraging that exploit to compromise systems. So if we know that threat actors are using it, that means that it works.
Okay. So let's, CISA's role, and I think the KEV list and Shields Up are good examples of this, but you're talking about how the role of CISA has evolved from when it started, because I know it's still one of the newer parts of DHS. So how has its role evolved?
Absolutely. So, when CISA was first stood up, it was known as, the nation's risk advisors. And we dutifully, carried out that role, advising organizations and federal civilian executive branch agencies on how to reduce their risk, minimize vulnerabilities, both cyber and infrastructure, right, in both physical and the cyber realms. And we're still doing that. Well, I think the evolution that's taken place is with some of the new mandates and some of the new, legislation that's been passed that's empowered CISA to do more. And based on the last administration, the current administration, we're being asked to do more. We're being asked to go and be proactive in our activity. Not just stand on the sidelines and kind of coach, but get into the game and actually engage stakeholders, engage organizations, engage our partners to say, hey, you should be doing this way, and this is the most effective way that you can, secure yourself and your organization. So again, CISA's still, we're not kicking in doors. We're not, forcing individuals to take our advisement. What we're saying is it'd be very prudent for you to do so because, we're looking out for the organization. We're agnostic to who or what type of organization it is. That falls under our purview. We're going to attempt to secure you in the same way we would secure any other agency that falls under our purview, be it, your local county government or, your large multinational company. So I can point to that very simply by saying, look at, the CISA's response to Oldsmar, Florida compromise. Again, small municipality, but CISA's response there was robust because we understand the importance of, of these critical infrastructure sectors and how important they are to, the everyday American at the ground level. And just as you saw the response to JBS in Colonial, CISA will allocate resources in a timely manner, absolutely as often as it can.
Yeah, wow. But it also sounds like you're trying to get ahead and sort of reducing, taking actions that will help organizations reduce their risk before they're.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to do that because that's the best posture to be in. You don't want to wait until things are happening to try to respond. Of course, you want to be prepared for response, and building in resilience after the fact is important, but also you want to make yourself a tough target. You don't want to be a soft target for organizations. You don't want to be a target of opportunity, for threat actors. You want to make, if they do want to compromise your network, you're going to make them pay for it. You're going to frustrate them every step of the way. And when you do that, it makes it more noticeable when that threat actor is trying to attack you.
Yeah, wow. So you've already mentioned Shields Up and the KEV list, but so KEV, can you see, what does that acronym? It's like known
Known exploited vulnerability.
No, I couldn't remember what the E was. So that, how is that list built? Is that from the reporting that organizations do into you all, or is that information you guys are gathering on your own, or?
It's a little bit of both. It's from internal research and assessment, and also it's from information that we're gathering from our partners in the private sector. CISA has realized long ago, in our inception, that we can't go it alone in this type of arena. It's just not possible. There's too much out there. There's too much at stake, to be honest. We need to engage our private sector partners who have, equivalent expertise in, combating threat actors. In some cases, they're on the forefront of, research and development and combating, cyber actors. So it would be foolish to not engage them and to gather their information as we move forward, because CISA is not in it for anything other than the stakeholders in securing the nation's infrastructure.
Right. And so your partners are, I assume they're like cybersecurity software companies, those type of?
Sure, absolutely. They do include private companies. They include, other government agencies.
Okay. And then Shields Up, that sounded like is that one more focused on sort of like the individual, like the consumer level, or is that for across all organizations?
So it's across all organizations. So Shields Up has, again, it has information for organizations. It has information for leaders within the organizations. It also has information for, families that just want to secure their home network.
Okay, interesting. So it's hard when you're talking with someone from CISA and it's an election year not to ask about election security. So I was just wondering, you can tell us a little about what, I don't know if you're involved with that or not, but just sort of where that stands right now, a few months out.
Right. So I'm not directly involved with the election infrastructure security. But what I can tell you is that those are amazing professionals that are working over in that area. And, when we go out and we're attempting to secure, our election infrastructure, we're not coming in to take over anything. We're coming in to support the local and state government to better conduct the election, right? CISA doesn't pick winners and losers. CISA doesn't care who wins. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the election was secure. So in 2020, after the 2020 election, the statement was made that that was the most secure election, in the country's history. And CISA stands by that statement. Now, what we are trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we can make that statement every election year after. That we can say this was the most secure election every time we have an election year. And again, not on winners and losers, but the fact that the American people have faith and confidence in the electoral system. That's what's most important.
Yeah. And I guess that holds true for all the critical infrastructures. Part of what you're protecting is that faith and trust that those infrastructures are secure.
Absolutely.
People believe in them.
We want you to feel comfortable getting water from, drinking the water in your home. We want you to feel comfortable that when you turn the switch on in your house, that the electricity will come on. We don't want Americans to live in fear. What I will tell you is that there are threat actors out there looking to, undermine our government and undermine our critical infrastructure. That's not a secret. What we're doing, though, is we're doing our due diligence to ensure that we're combating them every step of the way. We're frustrating that adversary by providing these services to to our private sector partners, state and local governments, federal civilian executive branch, and even working with our international partners as well.
Yeah, it's a big job you all have. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is, and I'm not sure if you can say too much about it, but if there's, what you guys maybe are watching from the war in Ukraine, if there's cyber lessons that you see coming out of that, and how that might be applied to what you do.
So I'm not directly involved with the activity in terms of some of those geopolitical tensions over in Europe. Well, what I will tell you is that, it's not a secret what's occurring over there, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility to assume that if they'll leverage those types of activities in that country, that they're willing to leverage them against, the United States. And we've seen some activity, not necessarily that nation state, but we've seen APT activity, targeting American networks and American systems, right? We can go back to, the SolarWinds compromise a couple of years back or last year. That was a major compromise that really took on a lot of organizations within the country. And it was a sort of a wake-up call that maybe we need to look harder. We need to be more focused on, what tools we're using and how to keep those tools secure. So what I'll say is, not speaking directly to that activity, because again, I don't work specifically on that, but Shields Up is a great repository for information regarding it. It speaks to some of the activity coming out of that conflict, some of it regarding industrial control systems on specific devices, phishing campaigns, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's interesting. So is there any, about time for us to wrap up, but is there a piece of advice or a message you want to leave people with as far as, working with CISA or approaching, these kinds of issues?
I would say, don't hesitate to approach CISA. Again, amazing professionals working over here, all on the same, we all have the same mindset. We're here to secure, the nation. There's a lot of different organizations within CISA. I work in the cybersecurity division, but there are other divisions as well that work specifically on infrastructure security. Because again, we do a lot of work in the cybersecurity realm, and that's what I was here to talk about, but we are very heavily invested in the physical security of our nation as well, and that physical infrastructure. So I would say is be mindful always of your posture. Definitely do self-assessments on your own network and your own personal, accounts. Definitely utilize multi-factor authentication whenever you can. It'll reduce your risk significantly. And if you're out there and you're supporting a critical infrastructure sector, contact CISA. Get involved with the CISA Cyber Hygiene program. Again, no cost. We all pay our taxes, right? And that's actually, that comes out of that. So, we're a government agency that's actually here to help, not just the kind of the joke line, hey, we're here to help. We're actually, putting those things into action. And it's very visible from the activities that we're taking.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that about wraps us up. Gabriel, this was really good. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good conversation.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks. So, and thank you to our audience and for tuning in. Up next, you're going to hear from my colleague, Alexis Lohr, as she sits down with our underwriter, Oracle. So for Washington Technology, I'm Nick Wakeman, and we will see you all next time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Alexis Lohr, Program Manager here at GovExec, and I'm excited to build on the themes of today's conversation with our underwriter, Oracle. I'm joined by Bob Shimp, Group Vice President of Oracle's Infrastructure Software Product Strategy. Bob, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Alexis. Happy to be here.
Great. Let's jump right into it. How does Oracle Linux provide a secure open source platform for the enterprise?
Well, security is core to everything we do, Alexis. We are used to dealing with very large enterprise customers. Of course, we're number one in the database business, and we take information management very, very seriously. And our customers use us for the most mission critical systems in the world. So it's key. Security is key to how we run our business. And our philosophy is really based on three big things: people, processes, and product. Starting with people, we have the top security experts on staff who plan our products, they design and run our processes, and they work with our customers to ensure maximum security. Second, we have refined our software development and delivery processes specifically for security. And this includes training for our coders in the latest security practices, heavy testing and auditing of our code as we develop it, refining our security response processes to deal with the demanding threat environment that's out there, and then close customer support to identify security threats and address the issues and do the root cause analysis to help our customers prevent them from problems from happening again in the future. And finally, of course, we're constantly working on security innovations in our software that will help our customers stay ahead of the bad guys.
Excellent. And what particular features make it a great option for businesses looking for a secure, reliable OS?
So Oracle Linux has a rich set of innovative open source security technologies in the product, including things like SE Linux, Kata containers, multi-process QEMU, and on and on and on. We work hard to deliver our certifications, the FIPS validations and common criteria certification. This is something that we've spent years developing and delivering on, and we've got quite a sophisticated set of certifications now for our various Oracle Linux releases, and a sophisticated process to deliver that. We're committed to doing that far into the future. And of course, Oracle Linux also ships with secure defaults turned on. We have a lot of unique features like our K-Splice technology for kernel, hypervisor, and user space patching, something called known exploit detection, and the most modern the most modern Linux kernel support.
Thank you for that insight. And what sets Oracle Linux apart from other Linux distros?
Well, perhaps the best example is our K-Splice online patching that I just mentioned. We provide zero downtime updates via K-Splice patching for all the critical components, the kernel, the hypervisor, and key user space libraries like glibc and OpenSSL. And this allows our customers to remain secure without having to take unplanned downtime to patch zero-day vulnerabilities. And K-Splice is included with our premier support so that Oracle Linux can provide live, non-disruptive patching for all the elements of the operating system. And we can do that across millions of servers at a time, protecting them every month. And we've delivered over 100 million updates over time. So whether the customer's operating in the Oracle Cloud or on premises, Oracle K-Splice can protect the Linux systems from vulnerabilities, increase security compliance. We are able to reduce human error by automating the patching process itself. We can keep systems running, improve overall system availability by not having any reboots, cut administrative time and cost, and then improve the support diagnostics. So there's a lot of benefits that K-Splice brings, but it also has an additional benefit by enabling us to alert administrators when an intrusion attempt is detected by us. And that is called our K-Splice known exploit detection. So traditionally, when you're fixing a security bug, basically you apply a patch and that's it. So, for example, if you have a buffer overrun type of bug, you're going to put a bounds check in the code that keeps you from being able to overrun that buffer. So later, if an attacker tries to exploit that vulnerability, not only does the kernel deny the buffer overrun, but if you've applied our K-Splice patch, our known exploit detection technology is going to be able to detect that somebody has attempted that vulnerability, that attempted to intrude on your system. So you can use that then to begin the process of upping your levels of protection. So as a specific example of the success of our K-Splice technology, there was a bug a little while ago called Dirty Pipe, which was disclosed as basically a zero-day flaw. And it allows escalation of privileges in the kernel. So it's a pretty serious vulnerability. Oracle Ksplice was able to patch that in Oracle Linux 7 and 8 without any interruption to our customers. That means no downtime. They were able to do this while in production. This is not the case for other live patching features from other Linux distributors. They ended up requiring customers to reboot their OSs in order to apply those patches, which is highly disruptive, takes a lot of time and effort to do that.
So you emphasize that Oracle Linux is backed by one of the most experienced engineering and support teams in the world. Could you explain the importance of your expert support, specifically the impact that it has on the level of security that Oracle Linux is able to offer?
Yeah, first, we bring our development teams and support teams physically close together. They're under one organization, and that fosters a lot of close collaboration and enables us to provide more expert support right when the customer needs us. So we can help our customers get to root causes and resolutions on issues much more quickly. And that means we're shortening the window of opportunity for hackers to take advantage of vulnerabilities that may be in the software. Oracle is also a member of the industry's premier Linux pre-embargo security response team, which means we're working with others on industry-wide security issues, zero-day vulnerabilities, but also enabling secure hardware technologies, addressing innovative open source technologies such as SE Linux and Kata containers and all the other things that we've been working on. In addition, we talked earlier about our Ksplice online patching. And actually, the secret sauce for Ksplice is the expertise of the engineers who craft each patch. It takes a great deal of training and expertise to create these small binary patches that can be inserted into kernel memory while the system is running. And we've assembled really a premier team to do this kind of work. We also perform routine auditing and have an internal ethical hacking team, experts, white hat security experts who can constantly hack our own software, our own kernel, to see if we can discover any exploits before the bad guys do, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of expertise that is built up in the Oracle Linux organization.
Excellent. And what does the future hold for Oracle Linux?
Well, for Oracle Linux, the future is really about innovation and more contributions, more community involvement, just generally continuing to make Linux better and better for everybody. We're continuing to evolve the Linux kernel itself. We're one of the top contributors to the Linux kernel. But we're also expanding rapidly beyond the kernel. And today, for example, Oracle Linux includes a lot of modern cloud-native features, such as a full Kubernetes implementation for deploying cloud-native applications, as well as a lot of other CNCF features. You're going to see us continuing to add many more cloud-native capabilities to our operating environment over time. Second, if you're interested in advances in automation and management tools, check out our Oracle Autonomous Linux capabilities that are offered with the Oracle Cloud. Oracle Autonomous Linux is really the first, and it's the only autonomous operating environment that eliminates the complexity and the human error that is inherent in management tools, which means we can really reduce costs, improve overall security and availability for our customers. And our autonomous capabilities are going to continue to grow and improve over time. Now, more generally, if you want to stay current on our product directions, our developers and our kernel hackers write this great technical blog, blogs.oracle.com/Linux kernel. And it's a great resource for technical content spanning from kernel internals all the way out to system security and lots of other topics. So it's a great place to go for future directions. For additional resources, you can visit oracle.com/Linux, and you'll find links to just all kinds of great content.
And with that, we are coming up on time for today. Bob, thank you so much for being with us. A special thank you to Oracle for making events like these possible. And thank you, our audience, for being here. For GovExec, I'm Alexis Lohr, and we'll see you next time.